So I'm going to reintroduce myself because I know that we have additional guests that join. My name is Tolu Ibikunle, and I'm part of the long range planning team, um, leading the efforts for the community area plan. And welcome to the East, Middle, and Outer session. Now, I have the format of the meeting is I'm going to present briefly on the draft community area plan and just how it impacts you and what it's about. And then after that, I'll open the floor to you all to ask any questions or provide any comments. I want you to feel comfortable. This is a safe space, so don't feel like you can't share. But I want to be fair and mindful and respectful of everyone's time and ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak. Additionally, we do have a hard stop at 7 o'clock, so I'm going to try to go as efficiently as possible. Okay, so the reason for developing community area plans is Charlotte has been continuously growing for decades and is projected to keep growing. So in response to the projected growth, our city adopted the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan in 2021, which defines our 20-year vision for growth and change in Charlotte. The plan essentially calls for future growth to benefit as many people as possible. The reason why we're doing this is even though the comprehensive plan provides the broad vision for our community, there are other levels of guidance needed to make our vision come to life. This is the planning framework adopted with the comprehensive plan. It identifies the subsequent levels of guidance needed to realize that vision. So, starting with level 2, since I already explained level 1 is the comprehensive plan, level 2 is strategic and plans and action plans. They are citywide documents that provide more details than the comprehensive plan on a particular topic. For example, the strategic mobility plan provides more guidance on how to realize goal 5, creating safe and equitable mobility choices. Goal 5 comes from the 2040 comprehensive plan. Level 3 are the community area plans, which is what we're working on now. They provide more guidance for the appropriate land uses, building form, and infrastructure needed throughout the plan geography. Level 4, specific plans focus on smaller geographies and provide more guidance for implementation of specific projects. It's important to note that levels 2 through 4 all build on the vision and goals outlined in the comprehensive plan. Community area plans essentially are about creating complete communities, which means creating places that integrates housing, job opportunities, and access to daily goods and services. In other words, live, work, and play in the environment that you live in, safely and equitably. Community area plans developed with a 5-phase process. That occurred over 2 years. Staff has offered multiple engagement opportunities in each phase. So on this slide, you'll see, all 5 of the phases where community engagement was continued throughout, and then the products that are a direct result from each of those phases. So phase 1, setting the stage, identified each geography's greatest needs in terms of access to housing, jobs, goods, and services, and reducing environmental impacts. That resulted in 14 community reports. And these are QR codes. So if you have a cell phone and you wanted to scan the QR code to access them, you're free to do that. Phase 2, oops, sorry about that. Phase 2, creating great places, reviewed the place type designations. Now, if you've lived outside of Charlotte or if you're familiar with planning, outside of Charlotte, oftentimes place types are referred to as land use designations or land use categories. And a policy map is typically referred to as a future land use map. Okay, so the place type designations within the policy map ensure future development addresses the community's needs for increased access to whatever it is they need related to housing, jobs, goods and services, mobility, green space, open space, and reduced impacts. During that phase, we held two public comment periods on the revised map to date, and that map is also on the project website. Phase three, setting the stage, worked with interdepartmental partners at the city and the county to identify planned and needed projects and supportive programs to support the community's vision for growth and development. Planned projects will still available on the project website through the workshop web tool. So there's a number of tools available and links to you that I can provide to you so that you can access that too if you like. Phase four, plan for action. It packaged basically the outcomes of the first phases into draft documents. And we publicly released all 14 plans, the program guide, and the revised policy map on April 3rd of this year. Phase five, which is where we are now, review and adoption, continues to offer multiple options for stakeholders to review drafts and provide feedback. This slide summarizes the engagement efforts from phase one through phase four. We've reached over 400,000 residents, both online and in person, using a range of constant and coordinated tactics. This includes tactics such as social media posts, our website, and all the online interactive content we produce, such as story maps and videos. While virtual interactions are great, we love face-to-face interactions. We still value those. And we were able to interact with 6,000 or over 6,000 people from phase one to phase four. For this planning effort, we have hosted 50 workshops in which we asked residents to join us, but we also made an effort to meet people where they were by attending other meetings. Festivals, libraries, where we had office hours where anyone can just drop in and ask us about the plans and where we are within the process and how they can contribute or provide feedback in any way related to how they want their community to grow and develop. You can see the geographic dispersion of our in-person interactions. So to ensure equity, we made sure that we went to community facilities throughout the entire city to ensure accessibility for all. I'd like to also mention that all this engagement builds upon the feedback received through the 500,000 interactions during the comprehensive plan development and the 6,000 interactions we received for the policy map. The plans were developed using a systematic process, and we had to because we wanted to make sure that it was done equitably. And doing 14 plans at the same time requires that we are methodical in how we approach it and ensuring that we're engaging as many people as possible. Meaning, we developed the system the same way, and we have the same components and format within each of the 14 plans. While the plans developed systematically, each plan includes unique content that reflects the individual character of that geography, as well as some new common policy guidance that help achieve our vision. These plans provide a common set of considerations for all decision makers to ensure we're consistently evaluating options in line with the city's vision. And when I say city's vision, I mean everyone, the community, all the stakeholders. Over time, these considerations will help ensure growth is accommodated in a way that respects established neighborhoods, aligns growth with infrastructure capacity, and creates vibrant mixed-use centers for all. This table of contents within East, Middle, and Outer Community Area Plan is pretty much the same for all 14 plans. So that way, it stays consistent and it's organized in a way that is user-friendly. Now, I'm going to keep the table of contents up on each slide for tracking purposes, just so you can follow along. This table of contents within this geography, as I mentioned, if you look at all the other plans, it's pretty much the same. And just so you know, for context, where we're looking at East, Middle, and Outer is here on the slide. where the arrow is pointing in the pink shade. The next chapter outlines the geography's greatest needs and prioritized goals. Needs are focused on increasing access to housing choices, job opportunities, daily goods and services, and reducing environmental impacts. The plans focused on these four needs because these are metrics identified in the comprehensive plan as paramount to ensuring future growth benefits as many people as possible. The 10 comprehensive plan goals were linked to these four metrics. So if a metric scored, here on the slide, if a metric scored less than 5, the associated goals were identified as priorities for the geography, with the caveat that all 10 goals are important, but this just prioritized the list to ensure that we were focusing on the geography's greatest needs. So for example, access to housing, access to jobs, and access to amenities are this geography's greatest needs, including access to daily goods and services. Whereas environmental justice is not one of the greatest needs because it scored above 5 because the score is 7. Chapter 4 focuses on recommended development pattern for the geography through the 2040 policy map. The colors in the map relate to the types and intensity of development that is appropriate in the area. To learn more about the colors, please feel free to view the place type descriptions in the appendix. Now, it's important to note that the plans recommend a large portion of the geography to remain as is, meaning if redevelopment occurs in these areas like Neighborhood 1, which is your lower density single family residential, then the new development should match the scale and intensity of development on the ground today. And as you can see on the map, there's a lot of yellow, which represents Neighborhood 1 or that lower density residential. Now, the plan recommends roughly 18% of the existing development to be recommended to evolve into a different place type as new development or redevelopment occurs. Other pages in Chapter 4, Creating Complete Communities, explain how recommended change helps advance the geography's priority goals and address their greatest needs. So this place type change will add new development to the recommended areas, which advances Goal 1, 10-minute neighborhoods by encouraging a mix of residential and non-residential uses within a centralized and interconnected development. This place type change will introduce mixed-use development to recommended areas, advancing Goal 2, neighborhood diversity and inclusion, by increasing access to housing choices, including the number of and types of residential uses where they didn't exist before. And this place type change from commercial to community activity center, for example, also advances Goal 3, housing access for all, and which is our affordable housing goal. And one component of meeting affordable housing needs is increasing the supply of housing, the types, and increasing housing choice. And at the local level, for the local market, we're not saying by any means that increasing housing will definitely equal affordable housing, but the more housing options and choices people have that are available to them, it does start to bring those housing costs down. It's like supply and demand, right? So future activity centers are recommended along existing or high performance transit lines or trails. So as such, this place type change from a commercial to a community activity center, or even a commercial to a neighborhood activity center, would advance goal 4, transit and trail oriented development, by increasing the number of households and jobs with access to high performance transit stations or trails, either directly by being beside the housing development or the activity center, or within half a mile walk or 2 mile bike ride. This place type change will add new mixed use development to recommended areas and advance goal 8, which is diverse and resilient economic opportunity. That means it would potentially increase the number and types of jobs for different skill sets where they didn't previously exist. Chapter 5, Supporting the Vision, includes 5 sections and references the neighborhood toolkit. So this is one of my favorite parts of the plan. The neighborhood toolkit is in Appendix A, and it's an appendix that references all 14 of the geographies, right? So the toolkit basically catalogs all the great programs that are currently available to residents to help address their needs. The intent is that it's a resource to empower neighborhoods who want to take some action. The toolkit outlines existing programs neighborhoods can take into um, and use to, for example, help add amenities to a common open space or create a neighborhood park, for example. Now, the next part of, still in the same chapter, Supporting the Vision, the mobility section was developed in coordination with CDOT, or the City of Charlotte's Department of Transportation, CATS, which provides public transit in our area, and CRTPO, which is our regional transportation planning organization for Charlotte. And it restates that Goal 5, safe and equitable mobility, is important across Charlotte, right? So it includes a clip, which is what you see here on the map, on the slide. And even though the map is small, I do encourage you all to go and look at the plans, look at the maps online, even print them out if you can. If you need a printed copy, feel free to let us know. We could provide that. But the map includes the streets map, which outlines the future cross-section for arterial streets in Charlotte. The smaller streets are informed by the Unified Development Ordinance regulations, or UDO regulations. It summarizes the citywide strategic mobility plan as well, and highlights the strategic investment areas within the geography. So as a reminder, the strategic mobility plan, it was in that triangle. It's the level 2 guidance that outlines the city's mobility policies. Strategic investment areas is a citywide investment strategy for maximizing the city's limited investment dollars in an efficient and impactful way. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have heard about strategic investment areas. Yes? Some? Okay. So for short, I'm going to call it SIA. And just what it is, simply put, the purpose of SIAs is filling safe mobility gaps by creating sidewalks and shared use paths, installing pedestrian signals and crosswalks, um, street lighting, street trees, traffic calming, ADA compliance. There are a total of 22 strategic investment areas throughout the city, and they were selected through a data-driven approach by CDOT, and it was also community informed through past planning processes, such as the strategic mobility plan, and they've attended and did and worked with community area planning as well. And the strategic investment areas also collaborate with CATS to address bus stop improvements if appropriate, as necessary, and bus stop amenities, things of that nature. But I want to underscore that SIAs are not the only investment tool used to basically provide infrastructure such as this. We do have the sidewalk program, the bike program. So there are other opportunities. And then the private market also provides these infrastructure improvements too when new development is happening. Now, a big portion of all of the community area plans are the assessments. So I'm going to start off with the mobility section. The mobility assessment was done, and it includes, it basically evaluates how well future mixed use places are meeting our aspirations as outlined in the place type descriptions. These assessments should be used by all stakeholders, so everybody, residents, developers, etc., to inform future development and infrastructure projects within these areas. Now, I know this slide isn't necessarily intended for you to read this table because it is a big table, right? It's just a snapshot of what you will see in the plans themselves. But this table corresponds with a map. So each mixed use geography category will be listed on the map. And that way you can, and then it'll have the street cross section. And that way it corresponds with the mobility characteristics that we're trying to identify and measure. So pedestrian network, bike network, crossings, the block length and street network. And block length, for context, the shorter the block, the more walkable, right? You don't feel like you're walking long distances. Parking, access and internal connections, and transit access. Now, there's a legend included, and the legend says, aligned with aspirations, somewhat aligned with aspirations, and not aligned with aspirations. So just as a clear, as you can see, there are a number of these areas that are not aligned with our aspirations. And we see that, we acknowledge it, we own it. And so these plans are intended to give us some guidance for a way forward to improve that. The next assessment is environmental justice. That builds on the comprehensive plan's vision to reduce environmental impacts across Charlotte. This section provides more detailed analysis of those impacts within the plan geography as shown by these assessment dials. So for example, tree canopy, impervious surface, proximity to heavy industrial, proximity to a major transportation infrastructure, floodplains. It also introduces heat impacts as a new environmental metric, and I will show that on this next slide. So this map is basically what we call a heat map, and this is illustrating how hot it is basically in different areas of the city. So the hotter it is, the red, these are the red areas that you see on the screen. So right along, and of course, along Independence Boulevard, Sharon Amity Road. So some of those areas where they are probably more commercial, retail oriented. But as you move further out, you start to get into your yellow, so it's less hot. And as you get to the blues, the purples, the temperature decreases. Okay, and so why this is important, right, is because we also have a tree canopy plan where our tree canopy division will be doing an updated version of that plan called Tree Canopy 2.0. And that plan will start to address all, some of those other environmental impacts that we're trying to address, basically, and minimize. So after adoption, what happens? Well, the plans are implemented in multiple ways through private and public sectors. Both have a role to play. The plans may be implemented through private development or even public and private partnerships. Capital improvements. We do, as a city, we're required to have something called the Capital Improvements Plan, or CIP, and we do put that out every year, so I encourage you all to look at that as well, and through rezonings. Community area plans are an important component of Charlotte's planning framework, but they are only one tool in our toolbox, right? So we also have specific plans in our toolbox which focus on smaller geographies and are more implementation focused, and they tend to be more detailed. We have the ability to develop this guidance if and when needed across the city. So keep in mind that planning is cyclical. We plan to monitor and update recent plans such as the comprehensive plan and the community area plans, every 8 to 10 years. And the reason why that's critical is because we need to track our progress using the metrics we've identified for like how are we doing with implementing the policies set forth in the plans, things of that nature. And we do that by checking in with the community again, data, things of that nature. The next steps, on May 20th, we hope that planning committee will make a referral to city council. And then in June, we're not sure about the specific June date, but city council will make a decision. And if you have any questions, I'm going to open the floor to you all. This is our QR code or the link here for you all to access the Charlotte Future 2040 website, specifically for the community area plans. And when you go to that website, this is what it looks like. And so this is not the last stop. So if you have additional feedback, we want to hear that. If you want to attend office hours where you can have that one-on-one time with us to get your questions answered, we're available to do that. We do have hard copies of all of the plans available at your local library. And so I'm going to go back to this QR code and I'm going to open the floor to you all if you have any questions or comments.
I definitely have some comments regarding education and income drivers. We talked about everything but what the East Side is needing. So I'm not sure who's at the table for the East Side, but all of us little local, chatters are talking about we can't. There's not even that there's a Starbucks on Albemarle Road, but not on the East Side. When you think about the geography, and maybe we need to look at that map. What particular area is the East Side? Because you said the outskirts. Maybe if you can put that map up. There is no talk about education. We're projecting 400,000 new people, but they think there are going to be kids there and that we're going to need new schools and new, things educating after school programs and social and mental health programs. We're not talking about the stuff that's going to happen in the next 15 years because right now people we got a whole community in East Charlotte is Latino. They're getting ready to be afraid to bring their kids to school. They have ICE sightings around here now where people are seriously, being arrested while they're taking their child to school. So I'm like education, and how does this align with the new Trump administration? He's cutting everything. What part of this budget is he cutting for the East Side? How do we know that?
Those are great
I know
questions, and I hear you. So if you can bear with me, I want to answer them in order.
Yeah, start with
So
education. Yeah, I'm
okay,
really
okay,
curious because
okay.
now CMS schools, they're all losing their students, their problem students, I would say, to the charter schools, which is just become another problem because now charter schools can have as many as 30 kids in a classroom, which was the problem in CMS schools.
Yes. So the thing, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I can see everybody. If you're
Okay.
just joining, welcome. Thank you so much. I just gave a presentation and you are in the East, Middle, and Outer session. And at the conclusion of the presentation, I open the floor for questions and comments. And so the first question we have is, how do the community area plans address education? Well,
Right.
CMS, they have they are a separate entity, honestly. And so
Got you.
they use the 2040 policy map to inform or as a guide for their capital and facilities planning. So while you won't see schools addressed or CMS addressed in the community area plans, we do coordinate with them and they were aware of the 2040 plan process. They even attended our engagement activities to ensure that community members can ask their questions and they could provide feedback. But to answer your question directly, that is valid. Um, and so while the area plans don't directly deal with CMS, that is because CMS has their own planning entity as far as how they plan for future schools and properties and things of that nature. So I do recommend, and I can take your name down. If you can actually put your name and contact information in the chat, I could relay your information to our CMS contact so that you all can communicate about some of your questions related to how they're planning for their facilities and growth of their student population.
Well, I
Okay,
just
so
find it, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yes,
I
because
said, I
we
just
are
find it
pressed,
interesting. Oh, go ahead. You're
mhm,
right. You're right. Yeah, you're
because
right.
we're pressed for time, we have a hard stop at 7. I'm gonna allow you to ask one more question, and then I've got 3 other people who've got their hands raised, so I'm gonna
Well, go
go to
ahead.
them.
Let them
Okay.
go. Hmm.
Okay. The next person I saw was Natalie. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, yes. So I believe one of the women brought that up earlier about more grocery stores in the
Mhm.
area, which I don't think we have seen any upscale. We only have Food Line and Compare Food and Aldi. So with the growing population housing, I'm curious, and I know that these are independent people who come in and open these, but is there any solicitation to bring in more grocery stores? That's one, because the population will be growing. So I'm curious about that. The other thing is zoning, and I'm also curious. One of my friends who lives in the neighborhood, she couldn't make it tonight, said that she had noticed a zone and had to go to the county to fight it, that they were going to put a senior complex in her actual neighborhood where she has single family living there. And so when you talk about mixed use, I'm curious to know how does zoning play a part in that? And then the third thing is security. How does CMPD plan on handling the influx of more people into a already tight neighborhood? So those are the three things. Thank you.
Okay, so you're welcome. So bear with me because I want to make sure I answer all 3 of your questions. So you might have to remind me, but I'm going to go in the order of the one you just mentioned last. So with CMPD, they have their own planning and how they address increased population and things of that nature. So if you could put your contact information in the chat for me, and I can refer your contact information to the CMPD representative so that the 2 of you or others can discuss what their future plans are. Safety is paramount for all staff, regardless of what department or you work in. So those concerns do matter to all of us. So the other question was related to the grocery store. So I want to make sure you can share. Can you all see the map? It says CAP reference map.
I could see a
No?
map that has a green, large green portion in the middle.
Perfect. Okay. So what you're looking at is the 2040 uh, policy map. Okay. And your question about grocery stores, what we do, we can't control, and I'm just being honest with you. Okay. We can't control whether Publix or Kroger or whatever grocery store decides to locate, right? They have to go through the proper, first of all, they have to they have to go through the proper permitting process just like anyone else. What we do as it relates to future land use is looking at the policy map, we identify areas where a grocery store can locate. So remember earlier, I was using the example as a community activity center. Well, community activity centers can accommodate a grocery store. There are other place type designations like regional activity center that can accommodate a grocery store. So when grocers are looking to locate in a city, they do go through their own process where they do a market analysis, population, even income and things like that to identify the best place to locate. And unfortunately, as you mentioned in your initial question, that's driven by the market, right? So what we do is we ensure that the on the ground there the zoning in place and the policy map accounts for areas for a grocery store that can go, but it's up to the private market developers, whoever, to identify where they choose to locate. Comparable to when we're looking to buy a house, for example, it's up to us to decide where we want to purchase that home. Now, to the other part of that question, do we basically solicit or try to seek out those opportunities? That is a question that I cannot answer, but I can, as I mentioned, please feel free to put your contact information in the chat and I can refer you to our economic development representative that can speak to that more clearly. What was the other question that you had? I want to make sure I answered everything.
Zoning and mixed use, changing the zoning to put mixed use in like single family home areas.
Okay, so there are basically, to simplify, I'm oversimplifying it, right? But we have something called the Unified Development Ordinance, or the UDO. The UDO was passed after the comprehensive plan was adopted. And ideally, your comprehensive plan and your Unified Development Ordinance, or in this instance, your zoning, matches, right? So for example, if you see this light yellow here, and it says neighborhood one, ideally, for the policy map, ideally the zoning will say single family residential, right? As an example. So that is mostly the case, but another part of the team is undergoing something called alignment rezoning to ensure that what is on the policy map matches the zoning map, basically. And as far as the other part of your question, are we allowing a mixture of uses in zoning districts? The short answer is yes, to a degree. So the example that you used was a single family area that now might have multifamily, did you say, for senior housing? Is that the example you used?
Correct. More like a high
Um,
rise, if you will.
so if and this is a good example, right? So all of this is single family residential, this light yellow. This purple, here, let me turn on the legend. Okay, now this purple here is neighborhood center, and this is campus. So neighborhood center is more of your neighborhood serving goods and services. So it might be like a convenience store, it might be a dry cleaner, those types of goods and service, a health clinic. Now, you notice that as you move further away from the neighborhood center, right, you have neighborhood two, which is your multifamily um, place type, essentially. And then as you move, like the intensity of development um, gets less as you move away from this center. Now, there will be instances where you have multifamily or neighborhood two abutting neighborhood one, but there's typically an opportunity for a transition, and that's what these are intended to be. And the reason why we have been allowing in some instances more multifamily is because we're not growing as far as land mass necessarily. And so we have to be strategic in offering other housing choices and housing types to ensure that people have access to different types of housing. So senior housing is one of them. That is a need. People do want to age in place, and that is important. So does that answer your question?
For the most part.
Okay, so the other part of that that I wanted to say, because I said I was simplifying it into two parts, is rezonings. So let's say the zoning on the ground says that it doesn't allow multifamily. We call that anyone is entitled to submit a rezoning application to rezone a property to a multifamily zoning district that could accommodate the development that they're seeking to build. Now, that is up to city council to approve or deny that rezoning petition. So in the example that you use with the high-rise senior housing next to a single-family neighborhood, I have no way of knowing if that was a rezoning and when that happened, or if it was already zoned for that. So, and it sounds like if there was a public hearing where your friend went to petition against it, it sounds like it was in fact a rezoning. And even though someone has the right to submit a rezoning petition, the public has a right to have their voice heard and go to that public hearing and state why they support or do not support the proposal. Any
But
other
at the
questions?
No,
yeah,
it's more we need to pay attention.
Okay, I'm gonna go. So once you have your questions answered, please put your hand down. I'm gonna go to the next person I saw, which was Nadia Anderson. Nadia, please feel free to unmute yourself and state your question. Okay,
Hi,
I'm gonna go to
sorry,
someone. Okay,
yeah, I'm on an iPad, which I'm not used to using. So,
that's okay.
um, yeah, I had a question, and I watched the city council meeting, or at least most of it, on Monday, and some things were brought up regarding community area plans that I've been wondering about. And these plans are at the kind of planning, zoning level in terms of land use, and then some ideas about place types. And I think I feel like there's a gap. There used to be, so let's say at Albemarle and East WT Harris, I believe there's a neighborhood center. Some of it might be, a lot of it is community center. But, if it's all left to the market, there are multiple different parcels. There's also, and I understand there are street types that are mentioned, but it seems like there needs to be another level of more specific design. And I'm speaking in terms of urban design that can, because the market is just going to go in there and build, strip malls with parking lots like we have right now. And, so I'm thinking in the past, a lot of neighborhoods had, area plans, but they were much more specific in terms of things like building form. And, and I know the form-based codes, I'm really concerned, especially in this area where there's a lot of, we rely on a lot of really automobile-oriented, areas, and the lift to get to a walkable 10-minute neighborhood it would be great, but I see it as really hard compared to some of the older neighborhoods. And so I'm wondering, how is it possible for local people, neighborhood organizations, local citizens to be involved in reviewing or suggesting, designs? I'm speaking from an urban design perspective, for more specific parcels that happens not just when a zoning review or something like that is going on, but something that happens earlier in the timeline, so that there can be some constraints put on the market And I know that zoning alone can't do it.
That's a great question. And so I'm going to first start off with the planning framework that I know a number of you weren't here at the beginning of the presentation, so I'm putting this up for the benefit of everybody, but also to answer your question. Now, I understand where you're coming from regarding, the form and the character, basically, of the buildings, and ensuring that it fits within the neighborhoods. And so this planning framework, it illustrates the well, first, can you all see this slide?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay. So level 1 is a comprehensive plan. Level 2 is strategic and action plans. And level 3, which is where we are, our community area plans. And level 4 are specific plans. And so to your point, where in the past, there were neighborhoods that may have had an area plan or a neighborhood plan. Those have gone, we're shifting away from that, and that's why we're developing the community area plans. And then after community area plans, the second level is specific plans. Now, I am not conveying or communicating that we're going to create a neighborhood plan or anything like that. But what I am saying is that you have an opportunity as a resident to share these concerns with staff. And I recommend that you say, what is the recourse for residents to have, to explore more urban design related issues, um, to develop it, to development, and on a more micro scale,
Can you just, I'm sorry to interrupt.
beyond community area plans.
Yeah,
Yes.
can you just explain a little bit what the specific plan, I mean, I've seen this before, what this number 4, what does that mean and who is involved?
So honestly, we're adjusting what that looks like. And I do know that that's something that as a staff, we have been having a conversation about after the community area plan process, what level 4 could look like. And so honestly, I can't answer that question at this time because that process and that format will will be developed basically. So, but as an example of what level 4 could be is it could basically focus on like a smaller geography and provide more guidance for implementation of specific projects. So that could be perhaps like a corridor of opportunity, example. I know you're familiar with corridors of opportunity. The playbook for one of those corridors could be an example of a specific plan.
Okay. So I have a question to piggyback off the planning framework. So the corridors of opportunity will fall into number 4. So the Central Avenue, Albemarle Road corridor is number 4, correct?
Yes, that's an example. Yes.
Okay. And how about the Campbell Creek, even though that's county, Campbell Creek, Greenway Extension, as well as the Charlotte Connector? Where would that fall into these 4 categories?
I'm not sure, but I can, if you put your contact information in the chat, I can follow up. I can get an answer and follow up with you.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to be able to see everybody. And once you answer or ask your question, if you could put your hand down, that would be very helpful. I see Angelia, your hand is raised.
Yes, it is. I was wanting to ask, being involved in grassroots organizations in the city of Charlotte and looking at that 51,000 people moved to Charlotte as of last year, I was wondering if there's going to be any space in our district for grassroots organizations to collaborate or provide different programs in our area, because that's very vital to our community, being that, the crime rates are going up, as well as domestic violence and different things like that, as well as people that need housing, in order for us to assist and collaborate with the community for residents that are in need of these programs.
That's a great question. I'm sharing my screen. Angelia, can you see Charlotte Future 2040 Community Area Planning?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to put the link in the chat, but I'm going to walk you through it really quickly because we are pressed for time. So when you get to the home screen, this is where all of the plans live for you to review them. All 14 plans provide comments and input. Now, we have an appendices. The appendices, when you click on that, the Appendix A is the neighborhood toolkit. So what you're asking, there are a number, we pulled together this neighborhood toolkit specifically for people like you, residents, grassroots organizations, neighborhoods that want to do more and want to, organize themselves and come up with ways to improve their community. So this toolkit will guide you and provide all of the amazing programs available within the city that can assist you with perhaps doing something like that. So, is there an opportunity for nonprofit organizations to collaborate within your district and come up with something to help the community? Absolutely. That is certainly up to you all to organize yourselves and do that. You do not have to do that with the government or with the city. Depending on what you're doing, there may be some permitting requirements or applications, but if you use this toolkit, there are even contact information for staff that could even assist if needed, depending on what the need is. Does that make sense?
It does. So
Angelia?
what you're
Okay.
saying is I contact. So what you're saying is people across
I'm sorry, you're
appendix
breaking up. It's hard
and
to hear
talk
you.
to them. I
I'm
said
sorry, I can't hear you.
it. I. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Try again. Maybe I'll be able to hear you.
Able to hear me
No, you're still
now?
breaking up. If you can put your comment in the chat, that'll be helpful.
Okay.
But yes, and I'm going to put this in the chat too, so you have access to it. And you can look through the neighborhood toolkit and see, what resources are available to you based on your needs. And you can go from there. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go to the next person. Because we only have 4 minutes and we have a hard stop at 7. R. Mallory, your hand is raised. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, yeah, real quick. I just wanted to know how much emphasis is on the silver line, if there is any, and what push is being made towards that, in terms of, the development it could bring and everything.
So as far as the silver line, let me pull up. For the sake of time, I'm actually going to defer to Kathy Cornett.
Sure.
Mr. Mallory has a question about the silver
The
line
silver
and
line,
what
yeah.
emphasized.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Mr. Mallory. So the silver line is in fairly early stages of its design, but we did in the policy map, we did incorporate the stations with that team that are where stations are identified right now. In this process, and what we've learned over the years is that stations function more as centers. So most of the stations along the Silver Line are designated as different types of centers. And typically they're neighborhood centers or community activity centers. Some of the larger ones are regional activity centers. Now that will change over time as the Silver Line moves further in its development process. But as I'm sure Tolu already mentioned, there are multiple ways to update these plans, and we will be doing transit station area plans once stations are in a firmer location. So that's about at 65% engineering design. So it is being thought of and incorporated along the way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Great question.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Patton, I know you piggybacked on another comment, but I want to make sure you had an opportunity to ask your question in
Yes,
addition to
ma'am.
that.
Yes, ma'am. So it's regarding the strategic investment areas. If you do
Okay.
not see one of those areas noted on the map, I noticed that we're actually at the central Albemarle area, but our
Mm-hmm.
community is also on the back end, which is Lawrence or in Hickory Grove. We have
Mm-hmm.
a community center, which is a library, at a very heavy vested intersection that we've tried to do on our own as a community to get a stoplight or a crosswalk there. We've got pushback from CDOT. How do we go about having that added to the strategic investment area if we wanted to pursue that a little further, so to make it safer for us to walk from our homes to the library instead of driving because of the high volume of traffic?
Okay, that's a great question. So what I'll do is I think you put your contact information in here.
I did.
Um, I will research that because I'm honestly not sure. And why I say that is because there's outside of SIAs, there are a number of other tools. So we have, for example, a sidewalk program, a bike program. I mentioned earlier, a capital improvement plan. So those may already even be in the works, and I may not know that. So let me do some research on the area, and then I will follow up with you. Does that work?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your question. Now we are at 7 o'clock. We do have a hard stop. So just as a reminder, well, Angelia, I see your hand is still up, and I know it's because you had connection issues, but can you please make sure that your contact information is listed along with your comment, just to make sure that you got your answer. And I also provided you a link, and everyone has access to this now because it's in the chat, to the neighborhood toolkit, where you can look at those resources available to you in your community to do more of those grassroots organizing activities that you mentioned. We at the city really value that. So this is a partnership. So anything that you all can do, that would be wonderful. Now, just to close this out, I cannot thank all of you enough for choosing to spend this evening with us and learning. This is where it really starts, is really being involved in the community, but also your local government to understand what's being presented. So please be an ambassador and share what you've learned today, and tell your neighbors, even strangers, because the more input we get and the more involvement in local government, the better it is for everybody. Kathy, do you have any final comments or?
No, perfect.
Wonderful. So, before I leave,
To
I want to make sure, yes.
Tulu, are you sharing this presentation with us, or you just gave us the link to the website? That's what we'll have, to go back on and take a look at. Are you
The
sharing this
link,
presentation?
I'm sharing the link to the presentation, I'm sorry, to the website,
Okay.
and I'm going to put that link in the chat. And the reason I'm not sharing the presentation is because the presentation doesn't do the website justice. Frankly, you can really get your hands dirty and look at all of the 14 plans, the program guide, the appendices, and that way you really understand what's being proposed, and you can provide additional feedback. I just put that other link in the chat as well.
If you
Thank
want
you
to
so
put
much.
if you want to put your link, we can send you a PDF of the presentation if you think that helps you.
Oh, yes. And earlier in the presentation, I also mentioned your local library has hard copies of all 14 plans, the program guide, and the appendices. So please feel free to take advantage of that and go and scoop them up. They're free. If you can, before I log out, please put your name and email address in the chat so that I know to email you a link to the PDF if that's easier for you. Please and thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And there's one more thing I just wanted to encourage. I know we have a hard stop, but just so you know what's going on in the city, even outside of community area planning, I urge you to watch. Everybody has a job, everyone's got, their own lifestyle, but I urge you to go on YouTube and follow the City of Charlotte's YouTube channel so that in your own time you can watch the city council meetings, the committee meetings, anything so that way you're aware of what's happening in this city. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening. And if you haven't, please feel free to put your contact information in the chat. I'll give you one more minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.